even started clapping. Before I start preaching, I want to, somebody reminded me, directly following this service in room 11, which is straight east, I'm doing a new member class, and you are welcome to come and be a part of that. We'll even feed you whether you join or not. Let's pray together. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
At the end of the service, we're going to sing a hymn called Pass It On. Joel, if you'll bear in mind, I want to intro that hymn. I want to say a word or two about it. I'm excited to be here today. I want to talk to you about an experience I had in my ancient past. Very ancient. Geologically ancient. Our New Testament lesson this morning is one of many call stories. From the early chapters, this one comes from the book of Mark. But what makes this story unique, or somewhat unique, is that Jesus in this instance is calling into his group followers, not the mayor of some town, not the senator from the United States Senate, or the upstanding scout leader in the community. No. On the contrary, he's calling into his group of followers a social misfit, an outcast. We really do mean it when we say all are welcome here, because Jesus had the same attitude. We need to remember, as we look at this New Testament story today, that tax collectors, and that's what Levi was, he was a tax collector, they were considered to be Roman collaborators. They were shunned. They were excluded by most of the people. That meant they were a social pariah, and they were even in literal physical danger. I have a question. Have you ever felt shunned? Have you ever felt excluded? Have you ever felt like you've been declared not welcome? Anybody? I certainly have. It's a terrible feeling. Well, I suspect that being a tax collector in Roman days paid pretty well. In point of fact, it was like a franchise. You paid a certain amount and you got everything over that amount, so you were motivated to collect all you could collect. I think they made money. I think they lived in nice houses. And I think they were very lonely. You remember any lonely times in your life? It was before drug use had entered the mainstream. I was young and filled with infatuation, living in the calm between two eras. Life was mobile. Remember? American troops had just entered Vietnam. No one was really paying much attention. We assumed they'd be home by Christmas. I don't know why, but we did. We had not yet lost our youngest president, a genuine American war hero from the Pacific Campaign of World War II. And most of us watched TV in black and white. Down in Yuma, 2 channels, Channel 11, Channel 13. Thrilling to the voice of Walter Cronkite, as he reminded us you don't have someone to share it with. I got very, very lonely. And yeah, I had some cousins. And they were over at my uncle's farm, but they didn't really care to let me in. You know that feeling? They were making no effort. You know how cruel kids can be. They hadn't taken any time or effort to make me a part of this. How often we do that to others. Who did you greet that you didn't know today in church? Maybe you didn't greet somebody who's feeling lonely. Or maybe you did. Now, hay season, how many of you ever plucked bales of hay? Hay season is a summer thing, you know. It's like make hay while the sun shines. Hay season back in Washington begins around the 4th of July. And I was awakened one morning around that date to the sound of men and equipment moving behind the house, behind Grandma's house. And I looked out the window, and I could see trucks and tractors and trailers and hay balers all heading out into the field. They were going to make hay. And I'd been left behind. I was devastated. I ran to my granny in tears. That night, as everyone returned from the hayfields, my grandma met my Uncle Gale at the edge of the hayfield by the house. Now, you need to understand my grandma. She was not someone to be trifled with. She was native of West Virginia. She had raised 5 sons, 5 daughters, and several of her grandchildren. And not one of the bunch, especially my mom, would measure an inch short of extraordinarily ornery. If you wonder why I'm in the line of work that I'm in, it's because I'm used to it. My grandma was an extraordinarily strong woman. Well, she talked with my uncle, and here comes my uncle up to the house. And if you've got the manuscript today for hearing reasons, there's a typo there, and it says, "And I'll never forget his words." Son, when there's work to be done, you don't have to wait for an invitation. I love that. Son, when there's work to be done, you don't have to wait for an invitation. Many, many years have passed since that time, and I've come to realize that my uncle uttered both great truth and a great falsehood that evening. The truth is, listen to me now, you younger sorts. The truth is that a willingness to work and to work hard is a virtue. The old German Mennonites that I pastored at one time said it in German, work makes life sweet. But my uncle was also unintentionally, profoundly wrong. What he didn't understand is that I was Grandma's boy, a city slicker, a finder of every cow pie in 40 acres. Anybody here not know what a cow pie is? Think about it, stride over, but underneath, inside, it's all ready to go. I was the new kid on the block. I was the greenhorn. I was the tenderfoot. I wasn't sure back then that I would measure up. I needed an invitation to believe in myself. I needed an invitation to believe that I belonged. I needed an invitation to come and work. And although we strive to hide it, there's a bit of the 12-year-old in all of us, isn't there? No matter how long we've lived this life, nor how experienced we have become. We all need an invitation into intimacy, into relationship, and into discipleship, and into the church. Have you invited anyone to church lately? Levi, I guarantee you, Levi wasn't sure he'd be welcome until Jesus said, "Hey, come on, Levi, follow me. Join with me and we'll and the youth ministry in the church dwindles. Our great hope is what you saw up here this morning. These young children and young people. But keeping new members coming into church. In the main line, we have a hard time understanding it, but I don't know why. It's not rocket science. The vast preponderance of people who join a church do so because someone they care about, someone they respect, extended a personal invitation. How many of you here are members of this church and came the first time because someone invited you? I want to issue a couple invitations of my own here today. There's work to be done in our church. It's stewardship season, and I'm sorry I have to mention. Actually, I'm not sorry. Your church needs your support. Jesus invited Levi to join his band of married disciples. And you know what happened? Levi got off his duff, got up, and followed. What happened next is in the scriptural narrative. They went to dinner at Levi's house. Now, I will tell you, that was no small thing in that culture. Eating with someone was a sacrament. And you didn't practice the sacrament with a Roman collaborating pariah. When some of the religious establishments saw what was going on, they were highly, highly critical of Jesus and his friends eating with someone like Levi. I want to share with you an observation I have of human nature. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. I believe that we like people who look like us, who act like we act, and people who share our viewpoint. Birds of a feather flock together. It's not in the Bible, but it's true. There's even a successful theory of church growth based upon getting the same kind of people in the same place at the same time. And it's successful. And there's only one small problem with it. It's inconsistent with the life and teachings and practice of Jesus Christ. Other than that, it's fine. We don't settle for that. I won't settle for that. Christ hasn't called us to settle for that. Our object, our goal is to bring diverse people together. And in order to do that, you've got to do something that's unnatural. You got to intentionally make room at the table. Jesus didn't just say, "Hey, Levi, follow me," and then forget about it. He took the time and made the necessary room to sit down with Levi at the table of fellowship. Bright and early, back on my uncle's farm. Bright and early the next morning, and I mean early. My Uncle Gail knocked at the door of my grandma's house. "Donnie, are you up?" "Yes, Uncle Gail, I'm up." "Are you ready?" And off we went. I rode in the pickup seat next to my Uncle Gail. I was proud. So we got to the business part of the Hayfield. And my Uncle Gail didn't just say, "Hey, you're on your own. Go for it." No, he said, "Donnie, can you drive the hay truck?" Well, any farm kid can drive the hay truck at the age of 12. And a lot more. But I wasn't a farm kid, and I said, "Well, no, I've never driven anything except my life." "Can you lift a bale over your head?" You'll find this hard to believe, but at the age of 12, I weighed about 80 pounds. And finally, he said, "Well, can you lift a bale up from the ground to the conveyor belt, which was about this high off the ground?" I said, "Yes, I can do that." He said, "Well, there's the job for you." And folks, I can't overstate this. I had a place. I had a job. I belong. I measured up. When we bring someone into the church, It's not enough to say to them, hey, all are welcome here. Hope you can swim. We got to make room at the table. We got to help each person to find a job, a place of belonging, a person. If they don't find a place of belonging in that first year, if they don't make some real friends, they will become inactive and they will leave. That's why choirs are so important. They give people a sense of place. Now that's as long as the choir is smart enough and the new person comes to sit down and say, oh, you can't be there, that's Jerry's place. Or, oh, you can't be there, that's Mary's place. You got to make room at the table, or if you will, in the choir. But it gives them a place of belonging. You got to have groups in the church. You got to have mission teams. You got to have this stuff so people can get in and plug in. I want to say to you, there's a place for you. Become an inviter. Sign up, get involved, make new friends. There's a place for you to greet people at the door of this church on Sunday morning and make sure they have somebody there to talk with them. I will tell you, I love putting up hay. You cut it down, you let it dry, you rake it, you bale it, you load it up, you put it in the barn. Positive feedback. It's either there or it isn't. I was 12 years old and I was doing a man's job. And I could see the results. The mission was clear. The hay was either in the barn or it was in the field. Human beings need a purpose. They need a mission. Most of us hope to accomplish something of importance in our lives. When a church brings in new members, it's not simply to fill the pews and balance the budget. Contrary to what someone may have said to you, the church is not a business. It's not to balance the budget. Stewardship season aside. People come to a church, they join a congregation, it's the body of Christ. They want to believe they're going to be doing something of critical importance, larger purpose. And that's where OCWM, our international ministry through the UCC, comes in. That's where our local missions come in. That's where our stewardship piece comes in, because we're able to participate through that. In other words, there's a three-step dance to making a church grow. Invitation, assimilation, mission. Invitation, assimilation, mission. They asked Jesus, why do you eat with tax collectors and sinners? And when Jesus heard, he said to them, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick, I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. Jesus believed that he had a purpose, and it was to meet human need. Is ours any different? Jesus knew what he was about and why he was on the earth. Do we not? What's your life's mission? Hopefully it's something more than just your own well-being. Invitation, assimilation,